What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and unfortunately, it's finally happened. Everybody's telling me that the Nintendo Switch is dead because a couple consoles got cracks on them. So I'm gonna go ahead and bury mine in the backyard, because I love this thing so much, but if it's dead, it's dead. Wait a minute. This is all pretty ridiculous, isn't it? A couple consoles having a couple problems isn't actually a big deal in the grand scheme of things. I think that we can all agree that even if your console does end up having a couple hairline cracks, as long as it works, it still plays games. But I'm gonna go grab my Switch and let's talk about this. So, over the course of this weekend, we've seen a ton of different reporting about all sorts of production errors with the Nintendo Switch. Tiny cracks in the console, scratches on the screen that don't seem like they're wear and tear so much as they are defects, and people reporting some major issues like their cooling vents on the top of the console melting completely. Now, this is all very startling to me because I want the Nintendo Switch to work as well as possible, and let's face it, as soon as your console starts having problems like that, it can put you in a bad news cycle. People talking about how your system is just prone to breaking. Remember, that's a big thing that hurt the early Xbox 360 was the red ring of death. I've even heard a few people mention the idea that this could be Nintendo's red ring of death, a early issue that's showing that there's definitely something wrong with the Nintendo Switch itself. If I had to have a theory, I think it comes down to heating. It seems like there is something wrong inside the console that's making it ever so slightly overheat and cause all sorts of warping or even cracking because of this. Mine, I only noticed this when I heard all the reporting. Mine is warped. My Nintendo is actually freaking bent. And that's kind of shocking to me because I definitely treat mine with a lot of respect. I make sure to keep this thing in tip-top shape because, I mean, some people don't like when I say it like this, but I need this for work. I review a lot of Nintendo games, and if this thing isn't working, well, then congratulations. That means that I'm out of a job. I need this thing to be in perfect condition. But what does all this mean? If the Nintendo Switch is actually having some sort of issues when it comes to the hardware itself, what is that going to mean in the long run? Personally, I think that what's going to end up happening is, if this is as big of a deal as people are thinking, it could lead to a recall in some variety. I mean, that's the way Microsoft ended up fixing the problem with the Xbox 360, and it ended up curing the problem in the long run. True, they had to end up repairing hundreds of thousands of consoles completely for free, but they ended up selling millions extra because people trusted them at the end of that console life cycle. If the Nintendo Switch is actually having some major problems, I think it's going to come down to Nintendo first admitting that something's wrong and then telling us how to fix it. But is this really a big a deal as people are making it out to be? I know all over the internet people are screaming about how this is the downfall of Nintendo and this is why their stocks are crashing, is that investors knew that secretly their console was trash. Those people are being hyperbolic and ridiculous, but I do think that I have seen so many reports about this, and it definitely does worry me to a small degree. And what I mean is, the amount of people who own a Nintendo Switch is a big batch of people. I mean, some people even own 2 or 3 Switches in a single household. So if even those people, just anecdotally, are reporting this many errors, their consoles slowly breaking down after only a year of heavy use, that's not a good sign, and it makes me worry about all the people who are not reporting it. Think about the fact that most casual gamers do go on YouTube to look at videos and tutorials and stuff, but they're not exactly on Twitter, they're not exactly looking at news reports on something like Nintendo Life or a place like Engadget. So when they are not reporting stuff, it makes it where our overall data about problems can get a little bit skewed. If it turns out that this is a bigger issue, well, we're going to start to see some really big repercussions. So my fear is that from looking around, it seems like there could be we're talking maybe 0.5% of people having this problem, which if there's still millions and millions of consoles means hundreds of thousands could have these ghostly cracks appearing. And that does kind of make me nervous, because if you're having small hairline fractures appearing along your console after just a year, what does that mean after 2 years? After 3 years? Does that mean that eventually my console is going to be made to break? That it will eventually disintegrate simply from being played? That's what kind of sticks in the back of my head, is that I don't want this to end up being something that causes a humongous, giant backlash in another year. So do I think that this is actually a big a deal as people are making it out to be? As of now, no. From the data we have, the concrete stuff that's being reported, it seems like in general, most people's system is completely fine. It seems like the people who are having the issues the most are, ironically, those who play it halfway in docked and halfway on the go. It seems like, from my own investigating, the people who play it a little bit of both, it seems like that is what's kind of screwing things up. That maybe it's that it's having the heat of playing it on the go and portable, and then it's having a different kind of heat held right here inside the system while it's docked. And so because of it, the heat being contained in different spots and doing different kinds of duty, I think that that is what is eventually kind of breaking it down. But it's hard to tell right now. Could this cause something major in the long run? I still don't think so. There's so much doom and gloom talk when it comes to Nintendo right now, because I think people are trying to figure out what's going on in 2018. They're talking less about the games, but the consoles keep moving. The indie developers are stepping up and making good stuff that just keeps making headlines as they blow minds, but people are still wondering, is the Nintendo Switch worth it? There is a big chunk of people who are on the fence, and every time there's a bad headline like this, everybody's got to click it and spread the word. I do think that this is something we need to keep an eye on. And I don't want to undermine this, even though I'm joking around in my introduction and acting like this is just a pish-posh thing, it is actually a sign of something that could be serious later on. Keep in mind, we actually have had some factory errors with the Xbox One and Nintendo and the PlayStation 4 back at release. I mean, people kind of forget this now, but I think it came out to something like 0.5% or maybe 0.5% actually ended up having their consoles not work in a variety of ways. For example, PlayStation 4's had their open button break, making it where literally you'd put your game in there and sometimes it wouldn't give you it back, sometimes it would spit the disc out and not even read it at all, and Xbox One's had a lot of crazy, weird, basically melting issues. There was a very small fraction of a percent of people who bought an Xbox One and it wouldn't turn on because it said it was overheating, or secondary, it would actually turn on for a bit, work, and then whenever the internal hard drive started trying to kick on, it would end up trying to basically superheat itself and melt other wiring. Now, all of this stuff is to be expected. When you're talking about mass production of a gadget that was basically built in a lab for a couple $1 million, while that experimentation and testing of it internally is very thorough, occasionally you are going to end up with a fraction of a percent that no matter what is going to break. Like, what was that cell phone that exploded? The Samsung. And the dude was literally talking on a phone and it blew up on his head and all the glass shards went into his ear. Not every single person is going to have an exploding cell phone. But if you do have an exploding cell phone, congratulations, that is going to be a very bad day. So I'm not sure that this is going to lead to an exploding cell phone kind of situation, but it does make me think that the Nintendo Switch is definitely probably going to get a revision at some point. The more I think about it, the more I start thinking about the fact that we definitely saw that with the Nintendo Wii, which is where they come out with a launch console, it sells really, really well, and then after a time, they find a way to redo the internal components to make it cheaper and sometimes just a little bit cooler running. So now that we are starting to see these little bit of rumblings of possible problems with the physical hardware of the Nintendo Switch, I do think that it's possible, theoretically, that we get a Switch revision. Maybe it'll probably still just be called the Nintendo Switch, But I still think that at some point in the next couple months or year, we are going to see a new version of the Switch that's just going to be on store shelves and sold as the normal one. Kind of like the way they had the original PlayStation 4 and then the PlayStation 4 Slim. It's still the exact same console, it just looks ever so slightly different and runs a lot smoother. But what do you think about this? Has your console cracked? Now, mine has definitely had a little bit of issues, and well, obviously the warping extremely sucks. But what about you? Is your Switch having any sorts of problems, and are there any cracks on it? Anywhere on it that you definitely did not get from dropping it like a football or burying it in the backyard like I did? Let me know in the comments down below, because if this gets bigger and worse, I'd like to know, well, that it's coming. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Alright, I'm going to start playing more of this horror game, Siren. It's scaring the crap out of me, and I love it. And I'm going to go get killed by some Japanese zombies. Oh, hey, I was just playing a little bit of Grand Theft Auto on my Darth Vader PSP. Are you curious what I'm going to come out with next? Well, if you click this button, you'll be subscribed to be the first to know. Also, if you click over here and here, you can see my latest review and my latest top 10. I promise, it was super good. Or it was really bad, and I'm sure you can just make fun of me in the comments. Either way, it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching.